From African statues that lead to terrible deaths to a doll that could stop your heart in your sleep, the Warren Occult Museum is full of items that should never have been found. These are forbidden, cursed artifacts in the Warren Occult Museum. It's no secret the Warrens had an absolute mountain of dolls, the most famous of which being Annabelle, of course, but tucked away is a similar sub-collection that came from all the way across the ocean, a group of African statues known as Fertility Dolls. The story of how Ed and Lorraine Warren got them is pretty dark. These statues were originally stolen from a witch doctor, and let's just say karma hit the thief hard. He died way before his time. There aren't many specifics on exactly what happened to the guy, but Ed described it as a terrible death. After that, the dolls ended up with a couple in Connecticut, and eventually the Warrens got a hold of them. One of the most unsettling things the Warrens ever brought home was a skull that was supposedly used in black magic. Ed and Lorraine Warren were firm believers that there are true Satanists who actually want to cause real chaos by linking up with demonic forces. Supposedly, this skull was a tool for one of those groups. The Warrens suspected the skull belonged to a sacrificial victim. On top of that, they had several tombstones that originally belonged to these cults. The Warrens definitely were not fans of these groups, claiming they did stuff that would make your skin crawl. Drinking animal blood was just the tip of the iceberg. Tony Spera, their son-in-law, has said these groups would go as far as human sacrifice. Speaking of satanic stuff though, we gotta talk about the Satanic Idol. In 1991, a hunter was trekking through the woods in Sandy Hook, Connecticut when he stumbled on this weird 6-foot-tall statue sitting on a rock right in the middle of a circular clearing. The longer he stood there staring at the thing, the more he felt like something was off about it, so he decided to get out of there. As he was leaving, he noticed an old man in black robes moving through the trees nearby. The guy didn't say anything or even look at him, he just quietly walked parallel to the hunter. When the hunter finally asked for directions out of the woods, the man just pointed, turned, and disappeared. The hunter got in contact with the Warrens. They went to the spot, found the idol, and took it back to the museum. But right after they moved it, Lorraine suddenly collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. She was out of it for 3 days, and the doctors were totally stumped. Ed was convinced it was a warning or some kind of spiritual hit from that robed man, who he believed was a high priest guarding the idol. The Warrens also took home pieces from the Donovan house as part of their collection. The Donovan house was one of the Warrens' heaviest cases back in 1974. It all started with a 19-year-old named Patty Donovan, who was pretty lonely and living under her parents' strict rules. She found a Ouija board and she started talking to what she thought was the spirit of a teenage boy. They ended up in a full-blown relationship, according to her, of course, and apparently the entity told her that he loved her and that she'd eventually have 3 kids, which actually did end up happening, but before the happy ending, things got pretty terrifying. The house started going nuts. The car wouldn't start. Shrubs were getting ripped out of the lawn. There was a constant pounding on the walls, and sometimes the water would turn red. Then there was also all the more classic stuff you get with hauntings too. Levitating furniture, doors slamming on their own, and the sound of phantom crying. Even the cops witnessed rocks falling from the sky in front of the house. When priests couldn't fix it, the Warrens stepped in and found the place in total shambles, the walls covered in graffiti, and they saw the furniture moving with their own eyes. They realized Patty's so-called boyfriend was actually a malicious entity she'd accidentally let in. After a successful exorcism, things finally went back to normal, and the family has lived there peacefully ever since. The Shadow Doll is one of the freakiest items in the collection. The story behind it begins with 2 doll collectors who, for some reason, decided to buy this hideous doll from a dealer. Apparently it was cheap. Very first night, both collectors woke up with weird scratches in their bodies. Started having these super vivid, terrifying nightmares, only to realize they were both having the exact same dream. The scratches just kept getting worse as time went on. When they called the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, they confirmed the doll was a conduit for a malevolent force that attacks people through their dreams while causing real physical damage. Ed used to tell people during museum tours that the Shadow Doll was known to actually stop people's hearts while they were trapped in those nightmares. Of course, even the musical instruments in the Warrens' collection are haunted. There's an infamous piano at the Warrens' Occult Museum. Ed Warren used to say he'd hear it late at night, waking up to a chill down his spine, hearing these soft notes coming from the basement where their collection was. Now, of course, no one was ever down there. Every time he went to see what was making the sound, it would stop. and then there'd just be this heavy silence. As for the story of this piano, apparently it originally came from the home of a priest who died, and the Warrens figured the spirit from that home might have followed it to the museum. In terms of when the piano would start playing, it definitely happened more at night, but not exclusively. There was really no schedule. Night or day, the piano could start playing anytime. Ed eventually brought in a priest to bless the museum, and for a while it worked. The piano stopped playing, but that never lasted. Every few months, the notes would start again. At first softly, then louder, until another blessing had to be done. And next up, we have the music box. One of the Warrens' most famous cases is the Perron family haunting, the story that inspired the first Conjuring movie. And if you're familiar with that movie, you probably know about the music box, because the Warrens actually brought the real one back to their museum, and it has a creepy history of its own. In January 1971, the Perrons, Carolyn and Roger, along with their 5 daughters, moved into a huge farmhouse in Rhode Island. From the start, things were off about the place. Started small. Carolyn would notice her broom missing. Sometimes she'd find it in places she'd never have left it on her own. There were also scraping noises in the kitchen when no one was there, and small piles of dirt would show up on freshly cleaned floors, and things only got worse. The house would also fill with this awful smell, almost like rotting flesh. Roger said going into the basement gave him this deep, unsettling feeling. And the worst part was that the girls started waking up screaming that their beds were being lifted off the floor. They also started seeing figures around the house. Some seemed okay as ghostly entities can be, but others had this dark, heavy presence about them. When Carolyn looked into the house's history, she found it had been in the same family for 8 generations. And a lot of those people died in really unsettling ways. The most disturbing part was that several people had themselves in the attic. One spirit that gets mentioned a lot is Bathsheba Sherman, who lived there in the 1800s. She was accused of witchcraft after an infant in her care mysteriously died. Andrea Perron, the oldest daughter, said she was tormented by Sherman's spirit, who saw herself as the mother of the house and hated Carolyn Perron for moving in and taking that place. Eventually, the Warrens were called in. They tried a seance. Carolyn became possessed, speaking a different voice and language, levitating in her chair before being thrown across the room. After that, Roger kicked the Warrens out and told them never to come back. The family ended up staying in that house for almost 10 years. They finally left in 1980, and the activity stopped. One of the creepiest details was how certain objects seemed to draw the activity, like the music box. Sometimes it would just start playing on its own. The Warrens took a bunch of items back to the museum, including the music box, which, according to them, would still occasionally play by itself. There's a piece of jewelry in the Warrens' collection with a serious reputation as well. You'd think a simple pearl necklace would be harmless, but the pearls of death proved otherwise. According to the Warrens, the moment a woman put it on, she suddenly clutched at her throat, as if the pearls themselves were constricting her. Breathing became nearly impossible. All the color drained from her face, but as soon as the necklace was ripped off, she was fine. According to the Warrens, this wasn't just a freak coincidence. This was the result of some kind of deliberate curse. On their museum tours, they talk about how objects like this can be used as vessels for dark energy. Just like a priest can bless a cross or a statue to channel positive power, some can perform rituals to embed negative energy into an item. The pearls of death were obviously one of those objects, designed to harm anyone who touched them. So the Warrens kept it in their collection, locked safely away. Tony Sparrow often said that handling the pearls, even just briefly, would bring this overwhelming sense of dread. And the last object on the list is something completely unexpected, but before we get to it, we'll start with a story. In Brookfield, Connecticut, back in 1981, Debbie Glatzel's 11-year-old brother David started seeing an old man in their new house, warning the family to leave. Now, luckily, the man wasn't actually there. It sounded like the kid was just imagining things, but when David started having violent nightmares, waking up covered in scratches and bruises, claiming the figure had turned into something demonic, trying to take his soul, well, Debbie and her fiance, Art Johnson, brought in priests. Nothing changed though, so that's when Ed and Lorraine Warren stepped in. The Warrens believed David was possessed by multiple entities. During a series of exorcisms, Johnson kept trying to save David by taunting the entity, trying to draw it into himself in David's place. Around this time, David reportedly levitated, spoke in strange voices, and warned that something terrible was going to happen. Months later, that warning seemed to play out. At a gathering, their landlord, Alan Bono, got intoxicated and started harassing Debbie's cousin. Johnson stepped in, things escalated. Witnesses say he started growling before attacking Bono with a blade. Bono died later that day. In court, the Warrens tried to argue demonic possession as part of Johnson's defense, but Judge Robert Callahan shut it down, calling this unscientific. Johnson was convicted of manslaughter and served about 5 years. The case became known as the Demon Trial, and the Warrens stood by their claims, backed by several priests. And the object tied to all this? A toy dinosaur that belonged to David, now housed in the Warrens' collection. Supposedly, one of the entities would speak through the toy. That has been the video. I will catch you, yes, you specifically, next time.